When was the last time you went outdoors? What kind of bugs did you see? If you would ask those questions to Satoshi Tajiri when he was still in grade school, you might have gotten a more detailed answer. Born in Makita, a suburb of Tokyo, Japan, on August 28, 1965, Tajiri grew up in a time when the internet was only in its infancy, and Nintendo was less about selling video game cartridges and more about selling Hanafuda cards. As a child, Satoshi was always fascinated with bugs and searched for them wherever he could. From forest to fields to even water ponds, he would find new ways to study and catch a variety of these insects, eventually building a collection of his own. Because of this, his peers bestowed him the nickname Dr. Bug. Guess you could say he was Professor Oak before Professor Oak even existed. But if you think for a minute that he was a model student or teacher's pet, you couldn't be any further from the truth. Tajiri actually disliked going to school and would have much preferred to skip classes to spend more time in the arcades playing video games. In fact, he would play in them so much that one of the arcades actually gave Satoshi a full-size Space Invaders machine for him to take home. Naturally, these little detours left his mom and dad rather displeased, as they thought their son was being a delinquent, throwing his future away. Of course, Satoshi did eventually get his high school diploma, and afterwards went to Tokyo National College of Technology for 2 years, studying computer science and electronics. Not only for some good credentials and knowledge, but probably also to keep mom and dad happy. However, none of this put a stop to his passion and commitment for video games. In 1982, when he was 17 years old, Satoshi Tajiri, alongside some friends, would come together to form a small magazine group for fellow gamers. One that would eventually catch the attention of an illustrator named Ken Sugimori, who would later go on to help Satoshi create Pokémon. This simple magazine group went by the title of Game Freak. Surprised? Pretty interesting to learn that such a huge entity in video gaming had such a humble beginning. How do you think large companies like Microsoft and Sony got started? Even the biggest of names had to come from somewhere. Subsequently, in the years to come, the gaming magazine brand grew much larger in popularity, and several years later, on April 26, 1989, Satoshi Tajiri and Ken Sugimori were ready to take the next step. They would create their very own video game company under the same name, Game Freak. But hey, hold your Rapidashes though, Pokemon wasn't even an idea yet. The first game that Game Freak ever made was called Quinty, or Mendel Palace as it was called in America. It was a puzzle game where players flipped tiles on a grid in order to progress through the levels. A good start, since they were basically what we refer to today as an indie games company, or small group of game designers that were not part of a major official gaming organization. Some more games would be made thereafter, and then Satoshi would come across something that would inspire him to make a legacy. One day in the early 1990s, Satoshi Tajiri saw two children playing together with their Game Boys, which were connected by the Game Link cable, something that seemed revolutionary at the time. At this moment, Tajiri had a thought. He imagined tiny bugs moving from one end of the cable to another, crossing a bridge from one video game world into someone else's. From here, Satoshi began to brainstorm a vision where he could utilize the full potential of the Game Boys and Game Link cables in order to give other children the chance to explore, interact with others, and capture little creatures just like he did in his childhood. After giving this conception more time and brainstorming, Satoshi would present his new idea for a video game to Nintendo. Although most of the people in the room weren't exactly sold on it at that instant, Since they had a difficult time wrapping their heads around this rough sketch and thinking it might be too big for a startup gaming company such as Game Freak. All except for one, the legend himself, Shigeru Miyamoto. The man behind Mario, Donkey Kong, and The Legend of Zelda saw great potential in Satoshi's proposal and decided to assist him in this endeavor. Over the course of 6 years, with whatever funding Nintendo would give them, Tajiri and Miyamoto worked non-stop to make this idea into reality, along with several others like Ken Sugimori, who designed and illustrated the first 151 characters for the game. Upon nearing its completion, all it needed was a name. In Japan, it would be referred to as Pocket Monsters. But when it made the trip to America, it ran into some copyright issues. Thus, they had to change the name and shorten it to the title we know and love today, Pokémon. In the years 1996 through 1998, the stage was set. The first 2 Pokémon games, Red and Blue, or Red and Green if it was in Japan, were made available to the public. Yet the odds were not in Satoshi's favor. Lots of resources were poured into this, almost bankrupting Game Freak. People at Nintendo were still skeptical about its chances. And worse yet, the Game Boys were not doing well in the market because people just weren't buying them. For all of these reasons, Pokémon could have flopped right then and there, and that would have been the end. But wouldn't you know it, Dr. Bug managed to pull it off. The games were a huge success. Sales of Nintendo Game Boy soared, due in no small part to the affordability of the console in tangent with Pokémon. And in the near future, it would become so much more than just a Game Boy classic. It would become trading cards, a long-lasting anime series, movies, board games, games on your mobile app, toys, backpacks, cars, toasters. You name it, Pokémon has probably been on it. It's been over 20 years since the first release, and this Nintendo stable shows no sign of slowing down. Pokémon is more than having battles. It became the ultimate culmination of exploration, adventure, collecting, learning, meeting new people, and expanding our sense of imagination, all bundled up into a masterpiece loved around the globe. Thanks to his special gifts and unique insight of the environment around him, Satoshi Tajiri, along with the help of friends and mentors, was able to create a whole new video game franchise that brings a special sense of adventure to everyone around the world. It's kind of hard to believe that all of this started out as hunting bugs.